It's Josh Rubin with the Rubin team. Let's go take a look.
Hi, everybody. It's Josh Rubin here with the Rubin team at Douglas Elliman for the latest edition of the Rubin Special, joined by none other than my friend and colleague, Julie Jones, live from Fort Lauderdale. Julie, you are looking ravishing in that duster today.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate it. It's a very cool 60 degrees with blue skies and breezes through the palm trees today. And you're joining me on Broward Boulevard at my private office here. It is wonderful to connect with you in New York.
Wonderful. I'm a little jealous. It's only 32 degrees here in New York, a little overcast, but typical this time of year, downright balmy to some of the weather that we've had in the last couple of weeks. But Julie, let's get to it. I know you run a very successful business down there in Fort Lauderdale, primarily single family homes, waterfront property. Tell us a little bit about your recent success in the last year or two. I know that South Florida has been on an absolute tear. So what are you seeing down there lately?
You know, it truly has changed over the last couple of years. And sadly, the pandemic was a situation that ultimately influenced the change in the luxury arena here in Fort Lauderdale, because we saw so many people join us from New York, from Texas, from California, who moved here very quickly. And it had a profound impact on the luxury real estate market, but it also had an impact on lifestyles overall, because the standards in restaurants and spas and the degree of development changed significantly in Fort Lauderdale and the surrounding areas. It also made people think about Fort Lauderdale as somewhere to live full time. Historically, Fort Lauderdale has been a big retirement destination, part-time residences. Josh, as you know, I'm sure you have customers that go backwards and forwards to New York. Now we're seeing people spend longer in the city. They're enrolling their kids in the schools, they're joining the yacht clubs and the country clubs. And so it was a huge game changer for us here in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I have considered with the rapid influx of people moving to Florida, and specifically South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and that region, is what it's doing to quality of life for people like you who've been there for all these years, both for the good and the bad. And we're talking about inflation, things as basic as your groceries, your run-of-the-mill restaurants, and traffic. And the feedback that I've heard is that things have gotten tremendously more expensive, and it's a lot more crowded, both in the schools, the restaurants, just your sort of day-to-day life. So what have you experienced?
Josh, you're absolutely right. And that is a good point. And I think it's the inflation, the increased interest rates, and the increased prices have probably most affected the move-up market here in Fort Lauderdale, or in Broward generally, because a lot of the families or young professionals who would normally move up to their next tier home have been immobilized over the last couple of years for the reasons that you mentioned. And the traffic is a big issue. I have to allow about 40 minutes to get to my listings in the north end of town. But I'm a London girl, so I'm used to traffic and used to congestion. And you just learn to use the time to talk to customers, to relax, maybe to plan your day. And so you have to learn to use the traffic time to your advantage, Josh, a little bit like you do in New York.
Sure.
Except that I can't walk to my listings because it's too hot, whereas
Right.
You may be able to walk to some of yours.
Yeah. So Julie, you have this niche that you've developed with waterfront homes. You were telling me a little bit before we went live that your average price is roughly about $7 million. Is that right?
That's correct, Josh. I've been hugely blessed in my business. I always wanted to specialize in the luxury homes and penthouse condominiums. The marketing fascinated me. My background is in sales and marketing. I originally worked, before I came to the US, I was with Vauxhall Opel, which is the UK division of General Motors.
Hmm.
I was the first woman that they hired to take care of 32 car dealers in Southwest London. It was the perfect background for real estate, quite honestly, because after working with car dealers, I had no fear of rejection. I worked
Sure.
a lot of very long hours. And so it was almost a natural for me to work into the real estate market. And the background of have a corporate background of time management and marketing has served me extremely well. Then I was fortunate enough to partner with a top producer in my office at very early stages of my career. And then I spent 13 years with a small boutique company that specialized in homes at that time in excess of $1 million. So we're going back some time now. And also enjoyed building and joint and owning my own brokerage for almost 9 years. So I've run the gamut with the real estate profession, Josh, but the the larger luxury homes are definitely my particular niche.
And how did you don't just land in Fort Lauderdale. I understand you developed these relationships, you had your own brokerage, but what's the average price of a home, broadly speaking, if you were to take all of the transactions into consideration in Fort Lauderdale more recently, let's say over the last, say, 6 to 12 months?
So what I noticed last year, typically for me, I have around 25 to 30 transactions a year because of the limited inventory, Josh, and there were a lot less transactions. So last year I had 12 transactions as opposed to 25 to 30. So
Hmm.
that shows you how limited the inventory became in the luxury market in Fort Lauderdale over the last year or so. I
Yeah,
do think that this year we'll see a higher number of transactions, which is obviously good for everyone.
sure. Yeah, I believe you're right. I think with the rates coming down, there's going to be an uptick of people moving, which is really people look at the headlines of transactions coming down, and they think that that equates to a market coming down, when in fact the opposite is true. The
Oh,
reason
I
why
think that's
volume is
true.
down is simply because that there's less selection to choose from, and
Yeah.
what's driving fewer options for buyers is the fact that there's less inventory, and what's driving less inventory is the fact that it's costing people more to upsize or move from one property to another. So they're simply deciding to stay put because those that have debt on their property are locked into these 2 and 3% rates. In fact, I spoke to somebody yesterday that has a mortgage of only 1.875%. So that person is now today going to have to step in for a similar product, and they're going to be paying 5%. So
You're
they're just staying put.
you're absolutely right, Josh. And I think that's probably been the biggest challenge of the market. And what I'm seeing as well, that we're seeing more very large scale renovations as people decide to stay put. But it's really impacted most of the young professionals and families that would love to move up. But we have to come from a position of reality, and it is no longer the 2021 market.
Right.
Realistically, I don't think we're going to see those 2% interest rates again. So we have to learn to function in a new sandbox and to make the best of it. The flip side of the interest rates is that I believe that the banks offer more products for the luxury buyers than maybe ever before. And it's very important to remember as well that you're really dating the interest rates. So marry the house, find the property that you want. Do not put your life plans on hold chasing an interest rate, because most of the lenders that I work with, you can always refinance at some stage. Obviously, it's difficult for us, Josh. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with the rates, but I still encourage people not to, obviously, you've got to think dollar and cents and stay within your real estate budget. But also, for many of the people that I work with, it's also a lifestyle call. You know, they're reaching a stage where they've learned to work from home. So many people learned to work remotely over the last few years, which has changed what the luxury customer looks for from a floor plan and their priorities and how they look at the homes and how they flow for their families. But so many people that I work with, they're thinking of their lifestyle. They're thinking about what's best for them, what makes them happiest. I think there's an emerging consideration for communities as people are living longer and taking a more positive look at the aging process. Then they look at the community, what they want from the community, whether they want to walk to the beach, how important the gym is, whether they want a full service community in terms of a gym, a club room, a business center. So I think after the pandemic, we all spend a lot of time reevaluating how we live, how we want to work, and the younger generation that's coming through. Josh, you and I probably see this with the younger agents. They have a much clearer idea of what their
Right.
priorities are.
Yeah, absolutely. The reality is that the consumer needs to focus on the home that works for their needs. Yes, there is an affordability component to it, but so many people are afraid to step into the market over the course of the last year simply because the rates are higher, and that's sort of masking their ability to make logical decisions and remain objective in the process.
It is, and you should always make an offer, right, Josh? So many people sit on the sidelines. I think one of the biggest mistakes that any realtor can make is not encouraging their customer to make an offer, because they then become frustrated if they see that a home sells within the price range that they would be happy to have paid, and then they blame you as the buyer's representative if you didn't encourage them to make an offer at that level. And I
Right.
think that we're all seeing homes that have been listed at 2021 prices. Now we're starting to see an adjustment. And I encourage all of my buyers, it really takes 10 minutes to prepare an offer. So shame on the agent and shame on the buyer if you can't take the time to make that offer, run it up the flagpole, and see if you can achieve a meeting of the minds.
So, Julie, with all this life experience, really, here you are in Fort Lauderdale, but it wasn't a straight line to get you there. So, how did you wind up in Florida and Fort Lauderdale specifically?
So I actually had a very interesting journey from London, from working in London. I moved originally to Des Moines, Iowa. Then I moved to Boca Raton, and I progressed south to arrive in Fort Lauderdale, where I now have made my home.
Yeah.
And but in the journey of building your business, Josh, even though the technology today is amazing, and chat IQ and all this incredible social media that offers a platform to provide so much information on the market and on communities, the ability to build and maintain relationships is still key. When I talk to people that are new in the business, I say to them, listen, you can learn the technology. People like Josh will introduce you to it. I have to be honest, this is my very first podcast. So I have a lot to thank you for, Josh, for
Of
giving
course.
me the opportunity and learning this platform. But you can learn the technology and you
Yeah.
can learn how to market. If you do not know how to go out into the community, create and maintain relationships, then it's really hard. It's really hard. So that is something that I focus on this morning. I had a networking group for ladies in the luxury arenas. Basically, I started it because I didn't have the time to meet up with a lot of my girlfriends who are in the lending business. They're interior designers, they're yacht brokers, they're in private aviation. I couldn't find the time to spend time with them, Josh. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a group so that I at least see them for coffee or cocktails once a month.
Yeah,
And
that's smart.
that's you've got to get out in the community.
Right. So what brought you to Fort Lauderdale? I'm sorry, what brought you to Boca Raton initially?
Well, I was actually dating an American race car driver. Please don't tell my fiance. But I was dating an American race car driver, which goes back to my time working in London with General Motors. And so I followed him here to the US. I worked in the car business for a while, which is a wonderful background for real estate. And then one day I thought I would get my real estate license. My friends were saying, you should get your real estate license because I love the process of selling. I love to negotiate. I love telling the story. I love the marketing thanks to my corporate background. And so I thought I would get my real estate and work part-time, which Josh, that's probably the biggest myth of our business. There is no such thing as working part-time in real estate. So
Yeah.
anyone who's out there who thinks that it's part-time, if you're really going to be serious about your profession, it's far from part-time. The business ebbs and flows, and you may work a lot of hours one week and less the next week. But in our business, Josh, you're either creating the business or doing the business. So you're never up to date. You're never on a regular schedule. But the excitement of the people that you meet and the journey, the achievement of taking a home and bringing it to market, launching it, and achieving a top result is really heady stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's interesting that you're dating an American driver because from what I understand, Julie, the Brits are better drivers.
Of course they are. They drive on the right side of the road, Josh.
Yes.
They know how to use roundabouts properly.
Right.
And they also know how to operate turn signals, which here in the US, those things can be a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
But I
It's
love
true.
being
Although
here.
on the track, there are no turn signals.
On the
So
track. I think I'm on the track every day with today's traffic. And it might be those New York drivers, Josh. What do you think?
I think you might be right. I had an adventure just getting here, which I'll tell you another time. But so you were in Des Moines, Iowa, and so what brought you to Des Moines?
So that was my first stop when I arrived from London, and I loved living in Des Moines. The people were fabulous. I was still in the car business then. It was a great 9 or 10 months, but I liked the sunshine. I liked the beach. I like to boat. I love being in a climate where I can be outside virtually all year long. So Fort Lauderdale is exactly the right mix for me. It's also a very cosmopolitan city. So today I was in an elevator and there was somebody from South Africa, some people from Montreal because the Canadians love our beaches here, and another couple that were actually visiting from France. So
Wow,
so Fort Lauderdale.
did the elevator get stopped somehow? I'm wondering how you
Really?
got to meet all these people and their backgrounds in an elevator.
I was going up to the 24th floor. And realtors, Josh, they can make friends super quickly,
Oh
especially if
yeah,
you're sandwiched into an elevator first thing in the morning. So it was fun. It's a great city. It's growing, it's changing. We have very excited to hear that the Waldorf Astoria is moving to Pompano Beach.
yeah.
Pompano Beach is north of us. It's always been the poor relation, and now they have a Ritz and a Waldorf, and four new boutique hotels are actually being built over the next few years. So things are definitely changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so back in England, um, what part of the UK did you grow up in?
So I grew up in the suburbs of London, and when I was working for GM, my territory was inner London, Chiswick out to High Wycombe. I actually went to university on the south coast in a little town called Bournemouth,
Uh huh.
where they make the fabulous Sunseeker yachts there.
Right.
and in Poole, which is on the south coast of the UK. But I do not like cold weather, as I'm sure you gathered, and I
Mhm.
also didn't like the taxes.
Yeah.
So I was very happy to move to the US and become a US citizen and pay my taxes here.
Yeah. Was that part of your sort of decision making in moving to Florida initially years ago?
Well, that's another interesting question because I used to vacation here as a kid. My
Hmm.
dad worked for Cunard, and we would come. There's a very lovely little resort called the Lago Mar in Fort
Hmm.
Lauderdale that's been there forever. And
Hmm.
so we would vacation here as children, and I always loved the beach and the palm trees and just the entire vibe of South Florida was appealing to me.
Yeah, I can understand that. And so, growing up with your dad working for Kennard, what was he doing?
He was actually the marketing manager for the QE2. We're
Oh,
going
cool.
back a long time now, Josh. Like most of the people watching this podcast, they probably haven't heard of the Queen Elizabeth II, the yacht there. But he was a naval officer who then went to work for Cunard. And the benefit of that as kids was that we traveled a lot, which was fun.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. I actually, I was on the QE2 with my mom at one point.
Oh my goodness. So
Yeah.
so those the cruise ships are fascinating in a whole world of their own, but they understand the importance of hospitality and relationships, and it's a fascinating world.
Yeah. And so, do you miss England at all?
No, I really don't, Josh. I have to tell you, I enjoyed my time in the UK. I had an amazing career. I also worked for a company called Federal Mogul, which is a US engineering company, and I was their marketing manager. And we're just, we're all on a journey, and when every experience you have prepares you for different things that you decide to do in the future. And it was actually the managing director of Federal Mogul at that time who encouraged me to look at the car business, which then brought me to the real estate business. So it's rarely an accident. It's all part of the movie that you choose to star in, right, Josh?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that, Julie, because what I found in this career is, as you mentioned earlier, some people get into it because they think that it's going to be a flexible schedule, which they interpret to somehow be part time.
Yes.
When in fact, if by flexible schedule, what's meant is that it's every waking moment, every hour of every day, and there really is no consideration to what's going on in your life personally. If you want to help people, you need to be like water and be there when they need you. Um, and but what's interesting is that you can create your own identity if you come from the right place. Meaning, it
Yeah.
can't be about you and your commission, but rather about the people that you know and how you can help them achieve their objectives, really, regardless of where it is or how much
Josh,
they want to spend.
that is so, so true. And I'll tell you a little story. I have one of these little books of quotes that sits on my desk.
Hmm.
January for me is an important month, and I always feel like so many of us that you're under pressure to do better, to start the new year, to start it with all these new goals and expectations. So I read the little quote for the day, and it said that it's not about the results, it's about the process. So my mindset that morning was, what are you talking about? It's about the results. But then I thought about it more as the day unfolds. And as you've identified, Josh, it's not about the results and the commission check. And we work with very smart people, and they want to be able to trust you with potentially one of their largest assets, and they will smell it on you if it's just about the commission check.
Yeah.
So if you involve yourself in the process and you you enjoy the process and make the most of it, make it as pleasant and as stress-free and as meaningful for other people, the results then follow. And I think that you made a really important point there, Josh.
Yeah. Well, again, you have to come from the right place. And as you mentioned, people can interpret where your head is and how focused you are on them and their needs rather than thinking about you and the bills that you have to pay and how desperate you are. The more desperate you are, the more difficult it is for people for things to sort of lean in your direction.
Yeah.
So whenever I talk to people who are thinking about getting into the business, I think, I tell them the same. I give them the same advice, which is that they have to have a year's worth of living expenses in order to really transition into this career, because it could be that long before they see, the results of their effort.
Yes.
And so, Julie, with all the years that you've been doing this, I know you mentioned that you had your own brokerage. So take us back to that time and sort of the crossroads that you were at in your career that made you think about doing that and enabled you to make the transition from working for a broker to being your own broker.
Yes. And it was a wonderful, wonderful 8.5 years. I helped a lot of people along the way. Ended up with a group of 33 agents, three full-time support members, and it was very gratifying. I worked very hard to mentor and train, and all the people around me did the same. It was very important to support the agents in their goals. We used to have Monday evenings where we would get together and talk about challenges and different approaches and what would be effective in their marketing, what worked and what didn't work. And so it was very rewarding. Um, and by the time that I sold the brokerage to my business partner, the average transaction at the brokerage was 3.2 million. We achieved so much in the time. It was very exciting. But for me, I wanted to be able to take my business to the next level and to spend more time with my family and friends and focusing on my customers. And I wanted to be able to bring them, Josh, I wanted to be able to bring them the the Knight Frank, the international exposure, and the national referral opportunity that you and I enjoy with Element. So it was bittersweet to move back to a corporate world. I'm really glad that I did it. It was a big insight into the overheads of having your own brokerage and the responsibility of managing a big inventory and a big group of people. So absolutely no regrets whatsoever, but super excited to be able to now learn and take my personal business to the next level. And you and I both know that Element does that very well. It
Yeah.
it enables us as agents to almost find our own voice as agents with our own personalities and be able to build our business.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's what's enabled me to thrive all of these years. I've been here now 16 years. And they've been very trusting in me and developing my own brand and identity within the company. And so I've really flourished as far as my business is concerned. So there's some great personal relationships that I have within the company, and I'm certainly grateful for the opportunity to be here.
And we
Uh,
have to reinvent ourselves. You cannot just stay in one place. If you go to the gym every day and you do the same workout, you're not going to grow. And for me, being on a learning journey and stretching my abilities and trying new things like being on this podcast with you today, Josh, was hugely important to me.
yeah, that's great. I'm glad that you can do it. And so, Julie, growing up in the UK, what did you want to be when you grow up?
Oh my goodness, I think I went through the gamut of all the things that little girls think they want to do. I wanted to be a photojournalist. and because I thought it would be incredibly exciting to go around the world and report on different situations. But then the reality hits that that you need to go out and make a living. And so for me, I went and studied sales and marketing. That then took me into marketing roles. That then took me to General Motors, and then brought me to the States, and finally brought me into the real estate business.
Now, what inspired you to want to be a photojournalist?
The thought of traveling all around the world and being put in different situations, Josh, and interviewing amazing people. Because I think that, and I think my love of people and working with different personalities has served me very well in the real estate business, because you do need to have the patience and tenacity to work with different personalities. And unfortunately, our business is not always tightly controlled, because human nature is such that the moving truck can not arrive on time, or the closing is delayed, or the lender package is not ready, and all of these different things that you and I know that can change the dynamic of a relationship and test anyone's patience on in any given day. So so I love the real estate business. It's a great career if you're prepared to work hard and you set yourself up properly to be successful.
Yeah, well, it's important that you have the right foundation for sure, as well
Mm,
as the right expectations, you know,
yes.
going forward. So I'm curious, having dated that race car driver, did you ever have a chance to drive on a track yourself?
Yes, I did. I did.
Tell us
I
about that.
actually, because I my specialization was motorsport, and so I would attend a lot of the races, and it's very exciting. There's no doubt about it. I just have to make sure that I do not drive as though I'm at Brands Hatch anymore, because we realtors, we really need a clean driving license.
Yeah, that's for sure. When you have your license revoked, it becomes a little problematic, especially if you're
It's
not at the
not
top of your
good.
class and can afford
It's
a
not
driver.
good. I really don't want a full-time driver, Josh. So I have to be careful and to obey the speeding limits locally.
Yeah. So before you came over here and linked up with the driver, you're working in the dealership business, but what capacity specifically?
So I was a zone manager, which is like a district sales manager here in the US. And you actually have a region that you're dedicated to helping to develop their dealership business. Now, car dealers are a little bit like real estate agents in that it's very competitive. The car dealers in London are on very small parcels of land, and they can be very close to one another. So my job was to visit all of the dealerships. I would allocate their stock to them, check their parts inventory, check their service ratings, customer satisfaction. And the first 6 months were miserable, because I knew nothing about service equipment or parts, and I was on a very steep learning curve. But it was a lot of fun, and I was grateful to have the experience.
And how long were you there?
So with General Motors, which is Vauxhall Opel in the UK, I was there for about 6 years.
So a good run.
It was a good run, yes, yes.
And you just kind of pivoted out of the automotive industry altogether?
Well, they offered me a job in Detroit, but I
Hmm.
don't think there are many palm trees in Detroit, so I had to come to South Florida and start again.
Well, is that what enabled you to get to Des Moines?
Yes, indirectly. So I went to Des Moines because that was a central area to go to the different racetrack testing areas. But it's good. It is good to move around, especially when you're young, It's not so easy to move around in the real estate world because you know we're typically realtors are typically pretty entrenched with their communities. Although I do admire the guys and girls that manage to be licensed in various states. I think that's a wonderful option if you have a home in two places to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great concept, but if you're one person and you do, let's say you're a contractor, but you're also a licensed plumber and a licensed electrician, inevitably something is going to fall through the cracks. And
Yes,
it's important that you focus on what you're best at. And as a
absolutely.
contract, maybe you're overseeing what needs to be done. And that's your strong suit, but actually getting down on your hands and knees and, changing a toilet or fixing a pipe or, changing out a light fixture, wiring a whole home is not your strong suit. So a lot of people
Oh, I
try to do
agree.
whole things and cut corners. And, there are these agents who have been, fairly prolific in recent years by becoming licensed in California and doing business in Palm Springs or LA and San Francisco, and then they come back to New York and they try to be the same thing here and Miami. And, you know, sure, you can have teams there, but why not focus on one thing and do it really, really well?
Yes.
So I think that there's something to be said for that.
Oh,
It's
Josh, I think you're absolutely right because especially over the last 2 years, you and I have really seen the value of the relationships that we've built.
mhm,
And those relationships are not just the buyers and sellers of real estate, and it's also our cooperating brokers and agents are a huge part of our success. So I work really hard to maintain those relationships and to help other agents in any way that I can because it serves you. And if you're not part of the community, you may not know the off-market opportunities. You may not know the best place for a family to set up home or the school systems or for the yachtsman. I mean, if you sell somebody who has an 80-foot boat, you sell them a property where you do not have sufficient canal width or the right setbacks or the low tide depths. There's a lot of additional exposure if you're not in the community full time and working the market.
yeah,
Which and the other aspect that I think is so important, Josh, and I know that you see this too, is to create a niche within the real estate world. It's a little like an author. Every author has their voice. You know, they have their particular formula, which becomes their success. I always encourage people the agents that I've worked with to try and find your voice, find your niche. You know, if you love waterfront business, learn everything about waterfront business. If you love historic properties, become an expert on historic properties. Go to the cities, follow the histories of the homes, and really become entrenched so that you become an expert, which is what it's all about at the end of the day. People want trusted advisors, and we have a lot of responsibility and need to become those trusted advisors and then maintain those relationships.
yeah. That's an interesting point, Julie. When you say maintain those relationships, for someone who is new to the business or is just getting into it, how would you advise them to maintain the relationship?
Well, I think the advice that I was given over the years was you have to go outside of your familiarity zone, not your comfort zone. Everyone's got a comfort zone, but you have to go outside of your familiarity. You have to be able to ask people for the business. This is a difficult business if you're shy because to be successful, you have to be able to say, listen, are you thinking of buying or selling real estate? Even if it's not next week, even if it's 2 months or in a year, and to be able to create those relationships. I also am a big believer in giving back to the community, Josh. I think if you're passionate about real estate, then you're passionate about building the community and being part of it. So I personally, I like to do a lot with the local charities, and especially those that are connected with the water, because we're a huge maritime community here. And so I work with the Seafarers House, which is at the Port Everglades. It's a place, a retreat for mariners from all over the world can go there, get coffee, they can call home, they can get off the cruise ships, off the container ships. I've also been involved with the International Seakeepers Society, which is all about keeping our beaches and waterways clean. It's also it also gives yacht owners an opportunity to involve their yachts in research, tracking dolphins, or looking at different aspects of wildlife. And so that's kind of exciting. I work with the Royal Dames for Cancer Research, which is an association with Nova Southeastern University. And for new agents, you may not be able to write a check for the charities, but Josh, you can give up an afternoon and go make shoe boxes, or help arrange a luncheon. So I really encourage people
Yeah,
to look at the communities.
yeah, absolutely.
So,
The idea of giving back is an interesting one. There are a number of charities here in the city as well that a lot of people, get involved in, and school boards. I know a number of colleagues and friends whose children go to school here in the city, and they get involved in the school boards. So there's a lot of ways that you can sort of maintain and build relationships that can, people see you become more visible within the community.
for sure.
Various charitable organizations and giving back. And you can also be more active and volunteering with your time, because at the end of the day, Julie, there really is nothing more valuable than your time, right?
No, Josh, I'm a huge believer in that, and that is why my tagline is that ultra luxury is time well spent, and we need to respect one another's time as well, and it's very important today.
Yeah. So Julie, I always like to ask this question: over your career, the arc of, your time spent with the automotive industry, and then you're transitioning from the UK to the US, and from Des Moines to Florida, Boca, then Fort Lauderdale. If there's one thing that stands out that you would have done differently, what is it?
I would have gone, I would have come into the real estate market sooner is
Hmm.
is the answer. But I have no regrets, because I think my corporate journey ultimately prepared me to work in the luxury market. But when I look at the younger agents and their opportunity to build their businesses over decades, I think it's very exciting for them.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's a long road ahead, and I think it's kind of interesting, especially in today's day and age, with people coming into the industry, and the recent headlines with the commission class action suit. If you had to use your crystal ball, what do you think might happen with that, if anything?
Grace, I think that's a very complex situation. It's kind of sad in a way, because I think that our profession is underrated. Because if you stop and think about it, Josh, we do not get paid until we get a result. Whereas other professionals, they get paid along the way. You and I get paid on closing. I think that as realtors, we have to learn to work to higher standards, and we need to take the time to explain to people the agency relationship, and to be as honest and transparent as we can be about our profession. But we also have to treat it as a profession. And I think it's very sad, because people do not go to their accountant or their attorney or their doctor and expect to get a cut price open heart surgery. So I'm not sure where it's going to end, Josh. I just think that there's an increasing onus on us to work to very high standards and to make sure that we're very honest in the way that we operate.
Yeah. Well, I think you pinned the nail right on the head, which is, the transparency and honesty that a lot of people lack. And I think that we all need to be held to higher standards. And there's really a question of ethics involved here. In my experience, there's sometimes some underserving that goes on that really works against our client's best interest. And I think that there needs to be greater transparency, not just in how we perform as individual agents, but really across the industry as a whole. With colleagues treating each other fairly and opportunities being given to more people for the merit that they deserve and being recognized for the effort that they put in to helping their clients and customers as well as their colleagues, and also getting to know one another for who we really are rather than who we think each other to be. Because I think that you'll find it refreshing that when you sit down with someone over a meal or a coffee, you'll find them to be someone other than who you think they are, just based on how you think that they treated you or what they might have said on a brief conversation regarding a negotiation or a listing or scheduling. A lot of people pass judgment, especially in this industry. And I think that it's time that we really take a step back and better understand each other as individuals.
I think you're right. And I think it's, for me, protecting our customers' privacy and confidentiality, especially in a world of social media and such a fast pace that we all operate at, is extremely important in the luxury market. And things are changing, and we have to be flexible and learn to change with them. And that's probably the biggest challenge of the next 5 years. And changing to adjusting markets as well. The realization that the market we had in 2021 is not necessarily the market of 2024.
Yeah. Well, with that, here we are in 2024. And so here's to a successful new year to you. And
absolutely.
Continued sunshine in South Florida. Well, I appreciate that, Julie. And thanks for joining us on today's Rubin special.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Josh, and to all the viewers. Really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Hi, it's Josh Rubin with the Rubin team.